Alright, so every time I want to film, like I go like say it's a week video, so I do one video a week, then the next week comes to another video, this is dead. And it's usually just I forget to charge it, obviously, but honestly, there was one or two times I was like, did I, or did it just die itself? So I was plug it in, wait for it to turn back on, um, all that. Now this is a very fat stack of image books, and the reason why so you saw my post, I'm not gonna get into any details surrounding that, but part of the reason was that also, but also I could have filmed the next night, but it was just so many image books that I read last month, and I knew I had to get that video out like ASAP. So without further ado, let's get into it. So basically what happened was I kept replacing them. Like it'd be a 12-issue series. After the 12th day, I replaced it with another image book, and it'd be a 5-issue book. Then after 5 issues, 5 days I would read one issue per day, and after 5 days I replaced it with another one. Just kept going until the end of the month, and then of course you had the horror comics for Halloween. All right, first up is Home by Julio Anta. This was a reread. I'd read this twice before, I want to say, or 2 to 3 times before this. Although, third time reading this. First time I read it, I found it to be very propaganda. I agree to anyone that said it was propaganda. Second time, I felt the same way. But both times, I still enjoyed it, because I think it's still well written in the sense that it keeps my interest. I was never bored with it. It was never a slog to get through. It was very well paced. I was just invested throughout. But both times I felt there was very propaganda. Just the definition of propaganda, definitely not tongue-in-cheek at all, not subtle at all with its politics. But nowadays, it almost does not seem like propaganda. It seems like it's one of those comics, one of those pieces of media that foretells the future. Like, oh, it's ahead of its time, and one of those kinds of things that foretells its future. It's ahead of its time. Still a little bit propaganda-y, but it's kind of interesting because of what's going on in our world right now, going back to reading this comic that a few years ago I would say was full of propaganda. So I do actually recommend this one. I recommended it before, just out of pure interest. If you like me, you hear this is propaganda, and you hear all the controversy, all the things that people have to say about it, and it still interests you because you have to see it and experience it for yourself. Already, I would have recommended it based off of that, but I think also because of what's going on nowadays with immigration, all that, it is pretty interesting to come back to this graphic novel. But definitely very good. Definitely very good. They're definitely very investing at the very least, even if it does. Again, it's not subtle at all. Subtle as a brick to the face. I'm surprised they didn't have Trump just show up in this book. Instead of being president, Vernesky was like literally Trump, and then the ICE agents were literally named after actual ICE agents. Like going that far, Christy Gnomes shows up. Going. I was thinking Christy Gnomes, but anyways, that's honestly what I would have expected in this book for this book to have happened, especially if it's written like recently. But I totally recommend it. Definitely not going to be that, it's not groundbreaking at all. It's just very investing, very interesting. Kept my interest throughout. And moving on, because I'm saying the same shit again and again. That's why this video gets to be an hour long. Silver Coin. This series, when I first read it, I didn't like the first story, the Chip Zdarsky story. This time around, there was not a single story I didn't like. I liked all these stories. The only one I'd say was not that great was a Jeff Lemire one, and that's because it really did seem to deviate from all the other stories. From what I remember, I think it was still kind of horror. It's also the most forgettable one, honestly. But all the other stories are really damn good and do a really good job of telling a story in a limited amount of time. Because it's not a continuous, ongoing story with each writer writing a different, say, it's 15-issue arc with each writer writing a different, same character, same everything, but each writer you pass off to the next writer and they continue the story, like how you did back in, if you ever did this in elementary school, where you would start off of a story and you pass it off to a classmate, they continue it. It's not that. I would like to see that, but what we get instead is it's just every person. The continuous story is the silver coin. It's like a cursed coin, monkey's paw type deal, but each story revolves around different characters. Except for the Michael Walsh stories, they're all connected. And then the 15th issue just connects all of them, which is really interesting to see. So the standout here, I would say, overall, I would say is still Stephanie Phillips' story. Johnny Christmas's is strange. I did like it a lot more than I did the first time around. I was really confused the first time around, and I still was the second time around, but not as much. I could tell you more about what happened the second time than they could the first time. James Tynion is a really good story. It's a classic horror. And then Porn Zach Bachodes was pretty good. None of them are bad. Even Rom V, like, I'm very split, very mixed. I have very mixed feelings on Rom V, but even his story I really liked. Vita Ayala, I guess it's a really good one. Like, everyone shines in this. The only one I didn't really like this time around again was the Jeff Lemire story. And pretty much it was just, like, completely different from every other story. Like, they couldn't, when that last issue comes around, you really couldn't connect it to what Michael Walsh was doing. It felt very disconnected. Like, take the silver coin out of that story, which I believe shows up. Again, kind of forgettable. And take that out, and it has to appear, because why would else call it silver coin? Take the silver coin out of that story, it really doesn't mesh well with all the other stories. And not just because it takes place like 400 years in the future either, from our present day. But damn good stories. So Home, I would give an 8 out of 10. Nah, Home I give like a 7 out of 10. This I give an 8.5 out of 10. I'm only saying that because I just realized I didn't do a out of 10 review, or out of 10 score for Home. Witches. I completely love this story. The first time I read it, I was absolutely floored. Do I think it's the scariest comic of all time? So far. I know there's probably a lot more scary stuff. I know Junji Ito, whatever he is, but that's whatever he is. Whatever his name is, I know he's well known for having really disturbing comics. That's more manga. So, like, traditional mainstream comics, I would say this is one of the scariest I've ever read. Now, I'm not, it's comics, kind of like reading a novel. I made this connection when I was showing this off, and like, oh, we'll be reading the rest of the month video. And I stated that it was, like, you read a novel, and it's, because it's words, it's not really that scary. Same thing kind of here, like, even with the pictures, it's, I can't say I've been, like, as scared about reading a comic as I've been, like, watching The Shining or whatever. I don't think I'd ever get The Shining, but in comic book form, where it's as terrifying as The Shining was for me. But this gets pretty close. Like, there's very disturbing imagery, very, like, definition of horror. Definitely, like, the artists here, like, do a damn good job, phenomenal job, getting the horror elements in there and getting the point across and all of that. This needs to be adapted into an A24 movie, directed by the guy who, ironically enough, did The Witch. A damn good story that I highly recommend. Or the guy who did Hereditary. She's not the same guy. So either Hereditary, A24 definitely. I feel like any other, maybe Neon, the guys that did Long Legs. I'm not saying it has to be A24. I just don't want it to be like a mainstream Hollywood bullshit movie where they have to do a little Hollywoodizing. I think A24 would do it perfectly, because they give the creators full freedom. I mean, honestly, I know there are some directors that Hollywood trusts so much that it doesn't matter what studio they direct it under, or they publish it under, they're still gonna give them almost full creative freedom. I'm just saying, like, A24 would be the best one. It's also to express the type of graphic novel that this is. Again, it's also an indie book, so indie movie studio come full circle. But not only is it terrifying, but it's just really damn good. And I'm still kind of pissed off we never got a follow-up Volume 2. Because if we got it when we were supposed to, we'd already have Volume 2 out right now. And if anything, maybe the whole entire story would be told. I don't know how much story Scott Snyder was planning. We do have a one-shot that I was supposed to reread after that. I didn't. I still remember, but it was not connected. It was more... It was kind of it wasn't connected to what happens here. And in fact, I think one story was a prequel. And it was kind of a follow-up, but it involved different characters. But definitely worth checking out. 9 out of 10. Maybe even 9.5. Slots with Anne Panosian. First time I read this one, I wasn't too impressed. Oh, yeah, Scott Snyder does Witches, by the way. I wasn't too impressed with this one. And I coined it as being like feeling like it was his first outing as a writer, and you could tell that like it was, again, it also just needed a second draft in general. This second time around, I feel that, but not as strongly. Like last time, I give it like maybe a 5 or a 6 out of 10. This time, I give it a solid 7 out of 10. It's not perfect in any means of the word, but I wasn't ever bored. I definitely did come out of this one second time enjoying a lot more the second time than the first time. Not enough to say about that one. Same with Alpha King. This is just pure entertainment, pure just B-movie, I guess you could call it. It does not care about having any sort of plot. It's just a bunch of action, a bunch of shit happening, and it's really investing. And they do have a plot, of course. I mean, like, there's not, like, emotional depth to these characters to go in. It's not Preacher. It's not one of those comics that you're gonna remember for ages after you read it. It's just a nice palate cleanser that you can turn your brain off and have a complete blast with. It doesn't require much thought behind it. It was just the writers had a field. You can tell the writers had a field day just writing this for pure entertainment value and nothing else. 8 out of 10. It's written by Mike. I keep forgetting to mention the writer's name. I say Michael. Brian, because probably Michael Bendis, I don't know. But Brian Azzarello and Nick Floyd. Secondly, it's called Three Floyd's Alpha King. I do keep forgetting to mention that because it doesn't show it on the cover. It's not showing the cover. That's kind of weird. It's going inside the book, right? No, not even inside the book, it's telling you. It just says Alpha King. Huh. And I believe Alpha King or Three Floyds. One of them is a beer company, so it's kind of going to be the comic based off a beer company. But again, it's just like it's a kind of comic that, honestly, the best way to describe it is it feels like it came out in the 90s, but resurfaced in whatever year that came out in the best way possible. Like, I have a soft spot for that 90s over-the-top, style over substance kind of storytelling, and that's exactly what Alpha King is. Perfect to describe it, actually. It's style over substance. And again, I know I give like an 8 out of 10 to Alpha King. I'll give the same score as something that actually does have substance, but that's because just a pure entertainment value behind it. It is style over substance, but it's very interesting and kept my interest. After Ward, it was well paced, all that. Had a lot of what I liked about liking comics. It just wasn't, again, had no substance to it. Moonshine. This is 5 volumes, all of which is written by Brian Azzarello, and I will mention the artist here only because it's the same creative team behind 100 Bullets. The artist here is, you guessed it, Eduardo Rizzo. A little side tangent here. Why is 100 Bullets coming back? You had it perfect. It was 100 issues, called 100 Bullets, 100 issues. And yeah, that 8-issue miniseries, Brother Wano, fine. But now they're coming out with another series. Actually, I don't even know if it's miniseries or not. It's like out of nowhere. I thought it was complete. Now I don't even want to go back to read and finally finish 100 Bullets because of that sole reason. Until it's out, until I know it's done for good. And again, not gonna get into it too much, but I understand. Part of me does understand why it's coming back. It's just kind of also like, why now? It's kind of like if Scalped came back, Like, yeah, Scalped and 100 Bullets, you can tell stories without the same characters, but taking place in the same, universe, obviously. But it's just, like, Scalped ended where it ended, and 100 Bullets probably ends where it ends. I've not read all 100 issues of that series, and I know, again, it was, like, more anthology for 100 Bullets, so you could have different characters and still have it make sense. It wasn't like Preacher, where they would... If you would focus on different characters, it'd be weird, Alright, anyways, moving on. Back to Moonshine. First time I read this, I was not impressed. So, going way back, I had read issue 1 for free on the Kindle, was not impressed, read it a second time, really dug it, then I bought all 5 volumes, and it was like within a heartbeat kind of fashion. I don't know. And then I read it the first time, and I was like, this is really weird and disjointed and kind of boring. Second time I this most recent time, it is still disjointed. It's still kind of confusing, but is very entertaining. I don't even know why I ever call this boring, because it has perfect, what I like to call perfect pacing. Like, literally perfect pacing. When I've said books in the past have perfect pacing, this is exactly what I'm referring to. Some issues would just end. And it was kind of weird, yes, and the plot kind of way, like it would just end, like, oh, well, that was an issue of this book, okay. Kind of weird, because it just ended. I know it's part of the overall arc, so you're not going to have a conclusion per se, but it was just like, even for that, even by those standards, it felt like it just ended. And I was just like, oh, chapter 6, okay. It felt like I just started reading chapter 5, but that's how part of the pacing was, that's how fast paced it was. But yeah, sometimes it'd also be like, the downside to perfect pacing, which sometimes happens. When I say perfect pacing, I don't usually, it's not because this happens every time, but it would just end. Oh, okay, there we go. But perfect pacing for me, for those of you who don't know, is if a comic normally takes me like 20 to 30 minutes to finish it, like on average, this would take me 10 to 15 minutes, like half the time, almost exactly, is what I call perfect pacing. And it still told its story, like, still fucking had a beginning, middle, and end for the first issue of an overall arc, so of course it's not gonna have like a definitive end, but it felt like it did what comics are supposed to do, especially for ongoing series. But overall, if I gave this one like a 5 out of 10, I would give this an 8 out of 10. Like, that's how much more I like this one than they did the first time around. And I already cannot wait to read it for a third time. I probably could read that next month and not feel like I'm repeating myself at all. Because again, Moonshine is just very like, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, and it's interesting. Kept my interest. And that's all I asked for a series to do. At least. Snot Girl. This I don't. So some of these I did not show off. This I did show off. I think I did here. I don't know. Volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I had read the first 3 volumes previously, but then Volume 4 is one of those series on hiatus, and it finally came back recently. So I get to read the entire series, from beginning to end. It is an ongoing, so there'll be at least a Volume 5, but no news on issue 21 coming out. I know it's on hiatus for a limited amount of time, but I thought January would come back, and nope, it's not. Maybe February. That's what I imagine at this point. But really damn good series. The first time I read it, I was skeptical because I heard the characters are annoying, and all the criticisms kind of scared me away from reading this the longest time. My local library had it, and I was like, you know what? Might as well give it a chance. I get it for free anyways. I liked it so much that I bought it myself to add to my personal collection. And this most recent reread, I still feel to non-reread. I felt it was just as good as I remember it being. Really investing. It has that same Scott Pilgrim feel. If you like Scott Pilgrim, you'll like this. But it was not redundant at all. It did not feel like it was just Scott Pilgrim, but with a different shade. Or green in this case. Very good. And the gross out humor is very few and far between. For a comic called Snot Girl, well, there is gross out humor in here. It's, again, very few and far between. So if that scared you off, you see Snot Girl, like, oh, it's going to be just a gross out, I don't want to read that. There isn't that much of it in it here. It is present, but there'll be like entire, like, I think like 3 to 4 issues would go, coming along, and honestly, almost an entire arc would go along. It'd be no gross out at all. But very investing story. It is like Giant Days, where this does have some elements to it that make it different than your average slice of life. Like Scott Pilgrim does the same thing. This has that here too, but not as much as Scott Pilgrim does it. But there are some twists and turns here that make it not your average slice of life comic book series. But the best connection I can make to it is it's a lot like Giant Days. How you just have just seeing these characters interacting with other characters, have seen their trials and tribulations of them living their lives, and nothing much else. There's no supernatural elements here whatsoever. There's a few twists and turns here that make it a bit more fantasy, but nothing too crazy. But overall, again, 8.5 out of 10. And it's written by Brian Lee O'Malley. I know it said same writer as Snot Girl, but feel the need to still mention the author's name. Next 3 series, so if I forget to mention it, the next 3 series are written by Cullen Bunn. Starting with Regression, the only Cullen Bunn series I had not read from Image, they had not read previously. My first time reading this, and I was very much impressed with Regression. 3-volume series, all written by Cullen Bunn, and it has to do with hypnotism, and I thought it was really good. Now, in true Cullen Bunn fashion, it does go off the rails as it goes along to the point where I couldn't even keep track of everything. I just completely fell off the rails for me, but in a good way. Cullen Bunn has that way, like with Grant Morrison, has that way of telling these outlandish, crazy, strange, weird tales, but still making it interesting and investing and keeping your interest, even if you have no idea what's going on. But I would say out of all its Image work, this is probably my favorite, and I give this one a 9 out of 10. Unearthed, so what's kind of funny about this is that these are all horror. Everything Cullen Bunn did for Image was in the genre of horror, but each storyline he did was different types of horror. This is monster horror. Regression was psychological, again, hypnotism, so kind of like that kind of horror. And then the next series we'll see is kind of similar to Regression, but a different kind of horror. So again, even though it had the same genre, it felt distinctly different from one another. You couldn't say this is a lot like this one. No, not even with Cold Spots as in its next series. Not even with Cold Spots and Regression could you say that, comparing those two. But this one, very good. A lot like I said before about Regression, it does kind of fall off the rails a little bit at the end. I felt like it was a lot more, I could tell a lot more, it was a lot more straightforward, not straightforward, it was a lot more linear than I remember it being the first time around, but still, at the end, it was this is kind of crazy. 2-volume series, all written by Cullen Bunn, and I think this gives a bit too much hate. It's crazy, it's weird, some of the criticism makes sense, but I still enjoy myself wholeheartedly, and I give this one an 8 out of 10. A lot of 8 out of 10s this month. Oh, and these are all read in October, as was made obvious because I said that I finished some of these for Halloween. Cold Spots, Cullen Bunn. Another great series. This one is a lot, I honestly would say, is the most confusing of all of his Image work. It just kind of feels like things just happen, and they have no real connection to what happened before, kind of thing. Somewhat, I wouldn't say that's that bad, but gets pretty close. 8 out of 10 though. Still enjoyed it. Cullen Bunn is one of those extremely underrated writers in my opinion. The Humans. NC-17, borderline NC-17, Planet of the Apes. Definitely R-rated. This is the definition of mature. There's explicit sex in here. Nudity on almost every single issue, much less every single page. There's a monkey here who has a shirt, and actually it's an ape, I think. And every time you see the shirt, it has this strong sexual, sit on it, or it's more crude than that. But these really crude shirts, that's like a running gag. Violence galore, language galore. Everything you expect in an R-rated raunchy comedy is in here. But it's not over the top to the point where I was like, okay, it's a bit ridiculous, Some things here, okay, you're just kind of doing that for edgy sake. But it wasn't too edgy, It wasn't that kind of, annoying, Has-Been Hotel, where people criticize that series for being too edgy. That's not what this is. This does have a pretty damn investing story with some twists and turns I was not expecting. Yes, it takes place in the 70s, you're going to have Vietnam, but I did not expect them to tackle Vietnam in this series, much less go the route that they went. It is very investing, it is very good, it's not breaking any new ground, but it's just investing and has some pretty interesting subplots here. And I give this one an 8.5 out of 10. Written by Keenan Marshall Keller. Do not know why the artist is named where the writer is. It's weird. And again, perfect pacing for this one, especially. Deep Cuts. This one I did review at the beginning of the month, so I'm going to keep it brief. This is an anthology tale, so each story takes place in a different time period. I thought this was pretty good. Again, the one I liked the most, I think, was issue 3. Whatever which one was with the daughter and the father. That one was really good. I had weird twists. I thought they were going somewhere. I was like, please do not be going here. That is too disturbing. And it didn't. And it was kind of weird. Like, you took that part out of it. Yeah, issue 3. The Casey Blue ones. We took that out of it and kind of like feel like it would. Because it was like, we going for that in this kind of book? And it wasn't that at all. And I don't know what they're kind of going for. I kind of get at the end, but like the way that they introduced it was like, no. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that was too much. But overall, I give this a 7.5 out of 10. It's not as, I wouldn't say disappointing. I thought it was a bit better than it actually was, but 7.5, I still good, still recommend. I feel like giving an 8 out of 10 is a bit too high for that book. Royal City by Jeff Lemire. This one I read before. I really enjoyed it, and it was always that story that stuck with me. And read this at the perfect time in my life when I one of those comics that I feel like fate had it in for me to tell me to read this book when it told me to read this book, because I did, and it was very relatable and really damn good, and probably my favorite Jeff Lemire comic, honestly, that I've read so far from him. And just 14 issues with just a damn good storyline. And definitely not exactly uplifting. It does have an uplifting ending, but deals with pretty heavy subjects that could be triggering for some, but I think it's a necessary read. Like this, honestly, I would go so far as to say this should be taught in schools. If you're doing a psychology course on especially the topics that are discussed here, this would be the perfect graphic novel to have the students read, or students read, because it's in college, so they're still called students. I know, like, teachers, high school they call it teachers, and then professors in college. I don't know why I thought it was different in college. Anyways, a must read for everyone. And 10 out of 10, it's that good. It's definitely my top 10. Ghosted Compendium. Oh, yes, I said it's written by Jeff Lemire. So I've been doing all the raves. Oh, Kyle Higgins for deep cuts, by the way, and Joe Clark. Kyle Higgins and Joe Clark for deep cuts. And it's every issue, too. Ghosted Compendium, written by Joshua Williamson. Still not super crazy about this series. I liked it a little bit more than the first time, but still unimpressed. I'd honestly go so far as to say it's 6.5 out of 10 for this one. Just kind of lackluster, like a borderline lackluster. You read something like Dark Ride, and it's like, my God, is that exactly what I not expected, but like what I like out of horror comics, where it doesn't have to always be terrifying, can also be fun. Like, if it's a fun horror comic, and probably fun horror comic, fun horror comic, fun horror story. It's kind of like the like how Beetlejuice isn't scary. It's just kind of fun, and it's that kind of storytelling for here. And here is for Dark Ride, and here it was just kind of like, not bad. You can tell it was written a while ago because it's dated in the sense that you could tell it was one of his first outings as a writer. Has that feel to it. Quite not polished. How does that sound right? Moving on. Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan. I've always said this is my favorite graphic novels of all time, top 5. It remains that way. Why am I being so quick? Because I already read this. I already reviewed this earlier last month. But those of you who don't want to go back to those videos, all knowledge is really damn good, and I recommend it to everyone. It's very investing, science fiction, and it just goes all over the place in the best way possible. And just 30 issues, they pack a lot of story into here, and none of it feels outlandish or rushed or anything like that. It is really damn investing, and 10 out of 10, must read, top 5 material. That's top 5 of all time, not top 5 Brian K. Vaughan's Image title, no, just top 5 of all time. Like, in the same breath as Preacher, I talk about Paper Girls. That's how good Paper Girls is. Dracula Motherfucker by Alex de Campi. I was surprised in the back here it was rated teen plus for a book that's called, it's censored, but for a book called Dracula Motherfucker, and it has some F words in here, uncensored. Kind of surprised it was Teen Plus. It's kind of like naming your movie Kick-Ass and making it PG. You know, that's the same realm. Yes, same realm here. Same. That's kind of was, you know, or even PG-13. Anyways, this was good. I like this enough. Like with a lot of Alex Campy's work, I thought it was good. You know, not great, not even groundbreaking. Again, Oedipus score. I feel like she did kill Oedipus score because she led him to commit suicide. I consider it to be murder, so she is a murderer. So we have a murderer in the comic book industry. How fun! Definitely separate the art from the artist. Like that's the best example I can give of being able to separate the art. Of how I am able to separate the art from the artist. I can completely understand if you are not able to separate the art from the artist. You're not missing a whole lot here. It is really good. I do recommend it, but it's one of those books. Yeah, if you're really against what she did to the point where you won't even give any of her work a chance, you're not missing anything here in that case. But if you're like me and you can separate the art from the artist, or you just didn't know when you saw this cover and like, oh, it looks pretty interesting, the title, like, oh, that's pretty interesting, it's gonna keep your interest. 72 pages, it felt like it was 48. Not even that, honestly. Dracula by James Tynion. Really damn good. I love this one. Like, the first time I read this one, I was like, kind of unimpressed. And maybe it was because I had watched the original Dracula beforehand, so a lot of, like, this is basically a love letter to that original Dracula movie, with also being a bit of a remake / reboot / sequel. Like, kind of like Halloween 2018, like, some elements of what that movie does here, but obviously done much better here. This James Tynion needs to get on, or they need to get on making this into a theatrical movie, because that's going to break the curse of the long-awaited sequels that disappoint. Because this will not disappoint whatsoever, and I give this a 9 out of 10. Frankenstein. If Dracula had more, like, it was more like investing, more of a love letter to Dracula, and honestly, like, it at times felt like it was more mature than, like this one is more campy fun. Dracula was more gothic horror, and that's what I want out of Dracula. But it's almost like Dracula, like, I don't want to say it's more mature, but like this one is kind of, it was just campy fun. It definitely had some like shock value moments, but it was still campy fun. It didn't deviate too far from that campy fun. 8 out of 10 for this. It's written by Michael Walsh. Quick on this one, because not a lot to say about this one. It's just campy fun. I did not watch the original Frankenstein beforehand, nor have I since watched the new Frankenstein Netflix movie. So no emotional attachment whatsoever to Frankenstein. I liked the original 1931 Dracula film for what it was, and it's kind of ahead of its time, honestly. And finally, Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives. Dracula is a bit unfair because of how much more it does with the story than the others are able to do. But taking that aside, I still think Creature from the Black Lagoon is my favorite out of these 3 so far. They're all really damn good. They're all, I highly recommend them all. But this one is like an 8.5, where Frankenstein is an 8 out of 10. Like, it's just that much better, a little bit much better than Frankenstein is. But still, all really damn good series. I love these Universal Monster Image titles, and I cannot wait to read more. This is written by Ron V and Dan Waters, and if I'm giving a Ron V a Ron V comic series an 8.5 out of 10, that should go to show just how much I liked it. In this one, I think does what a lot of these, again, like with Dracula, does these, like, this is more of a sequel than Dracula is. It straight up is a sequel, and it takes place like way far in the future. I don't think there are really many connections made to the original Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives, which I did not like. Straight up did not like Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives. That was extremely dated and boring. And this is not that at all. And I feel like that had like a nice little twist and turn here. I had not expected it to be more true crime than it was, and it's able to mesh those two genres together in a pretty interesting way. I forgot a lot of what happened in it the first time I read it, and the second time I read it, it's like, oh wow, I forgot about that kind of. And I knew it was a serial killer subplot, but I kind of forgot how they made the connection to the creature in Black Lagoon Lives. I thought it was pretty good. The last issue was very fast paced, like almost too fast paced. I thought it was kind of rushed, but overall, still an 8.5 out of 10. Did not deviate from my overall enjoyment of this graphic novel. Overall, so that, as I say, is that. There's a lot of graphic novels I just reviewed, a lot of recommends. Honestly, not even with Ghosted, I would not say there was any comic that I read this past month from Image that I hated. Ghosted was just kind of not even disappointing, because I read it the first time around, and it was a reread, and I liked it more than I did the second time around, the first time around. The second time around, I liked it more than the first time around. Yeah, I think the low is 6.5. And that, as I say, is that 35 minutes. That was pretty good. So some of you can tell that some of these I had not a whole lot to say about them. That's how it is sometimes. You run into that. I don't say curse. It's kind of stupid to say. You run into that problem sometimes, and I wouldn't say. I'm not saying it's a problem. Some graphic novels I'm reviewing, just in general, regardless of like Paper Girls I reviewed previously, so I had not a whole lot more to say. Even disregarding that, sometimes I don't have a lot to say. Like Frankenstein, which just can't be fun. Liked it. That's all I need to say. But in series like Moonshine and Alpha Flight, especially Moonshine, I felt the need to mention, hey, I've read these before. Second time read, this is how I felt the first time. Second time around, here's why I liked it more the second time around. I explain a little bit more, and then a little tangent for 100 bullets. But finally getting this video out, I'm going to record, upload it right away, and as I say, is that.